The fluorescent lights above me blurred into white streaks as the paramedics rushed my gurney through the emergency room doors. My ribs screamed with every breath. The doctor appeared beside me, his face grave. Internal bleeding. Emergency surgery. He needed consent forms signed. I dialed my parents with shaking fingers. Dad answered on the third ring. I could barely get the words out. His response made my blood run colder than the IV fluid pumping into my arm. Can't this wait? We're busy. Mom's voice echoed in the background. Tell her we have plans. The line went dead. I stared at my phone screen, unable to process what had just happened. A truck had T-boned my sedan at the intersection of 5th and Marshall Street less than an hour ago. The impact had spun my car completely around. I remembered the screech of metal, the explosion of the airbag, and then nothing until the paramedics were cutting my seatbelt. And my parents couldn't be bothered. The doctor returned, clipboard in hand. Miss, we really need those signatures. Time is critical here. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through my contacts. There was only one other person I could call. Grandpa Harold answered before the first ring finished. Kendra? What's wrong, sweetheart? I'm at Mercy General. I was in an accident. I need surgery, and they need someone to sign consent forms. Mom and Dad won't come. The silence on the other end lasted only a heartbeat. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't you worry about a thing. He made it in 18. I heard his voice booming down the hallway before I saw him. Where's my granddaughter? His silver hair was disheveled, like he'd run his hands through it a dozen times on the drive over. His face, usually so calm and steady, was tight with worry. When he reached my bedside, his eyes welled up. Oh, Kenny. Nobody called me Kenny except him. It was his nickname for me since I was 3 years old. He grabbed my hand, careful not to disturb the IV. I'm here now. Everything's going to be okay. The doctor explained the procedure while Grandpa listened intently, asking questions I was too foggy to think of. He signed the forms without hesitation. As they prepped me for surgery, Grandpa leaned close. I'll be right here when you wake up. I promise. The anesthesia pulled me under, but not before I wondered why the two people who were supposed to love me most couldn't spare an hour of their precious time. When I opened my eyes again, the world felt cotton soft and distant. My mouth tasted like metal. Grandpa sat in the chair beside my bed, his head tilted back, snoring softly. The clock on the wall read 6:47 in the morning. He'd been here all night. A nurse came in to check my vitals. You're one lucky lady. That internal bleeding was more severe than we initially thought. Another hour and we might have lost you. The words should have scared me, but I was too numb. Grandpa stirred, blinking awake. His face broke into relief when he saw me conscious. There she is. How do you feel? Like I got hit by a truck. He chuckled, but it sounded hollow. That's because you did, sweetheart. My phone buzzed on the side table. 17 missed calls. 23 text messages. All from my parents. Finally, they cared. I opened the messages with my free hand. The first one read, "Why did you call your grandfather? You're being so dramatic about this." The next, "It wasn't even that serious. You could have waited until morning." And another, "You're embarrassing us making such a scene." Not a single message asked how I was. Not one expressed concern about my injuries or relief that I'd survived. Just anger that I'd involved Grandpa Harold. My chest tightened, and it had nothing to do with my cracked ribs. Grandpa noticed my expression. "What is it?" I handed him the phone. He read through the messages, his jaw clenching tighter with each one. His face turned a shade of red I'd never seen before. He set the phone down very carefully, like he was afraid he might crush it. "Get some rest, Kenny. We'll deal with this later." But I couldn't rest. Questions swirled through my medication-clouded mind. Why were my parents so angry? What were they so busy with that they couldn't come to the hospital? And why did their messages sound less like concerned parents and more like I'd inconvenienced them? The next day brought more questions and fewer answers. I was moved from recovery to a regular room. Grandpa had gone home briefly to shower and change clothes, but promised to return. The nurses kept commenting on how sweet it was that my grandfather was so devoted. If only they knew he was the only family member who'd bothered to show up. Around 2 in the afternoon, my hospital room door cracked open. My younger sister Brooke peeked in, her blonde hair pulled into a messy ponytail. She looked nervous, her eyes darting to the hallway before she slipped inside and closed the door quietly behind her. "Kendra." Her voice was barely above a whisper. She rushed to my bedside and hugged me gently, careful of my injuries. "I'm so sorry. I wanted to come sooner, but Mom and Dad. She trailed off, biting her lip. Brooke was 24, 4 years younger than me. We'd always been close, though lately she'd been distant. I'd assumed she was just busy with her new teaching job at the elementary school across town. It's okay. I'm just glad you're here. She pulled up a chair, but her hands wouldn't stop fidgeting with the strap of her purse. That nervous energy radiating off her made my stomach twist. Brooke, what's wrong? She glanced at the door again. Kendra, I need to tell you something. Last week, Mom asked me to sign some papers. She said they were for a surprise birthday party for you. Your birthday's next month, so I didn't think anything of it. My birthday was indeed coming up. I'd be turning 29. But dread was already pooling in my gut. Brooke pulled out her phone, her fingers shaking as she swiped through her photo gallery. But yesterday, I was looking for a recipe Mom sent me, and I found these pictures I'd taken of the documents. I wanted to remember what the party planning papers looked like. But Kendra, these aren't party plans. She turned her phone toward me. The screen showed a photo of a legal document. I squinted, trying to read the small print through my pain medication haze. The words slowly came into focus. Trust beneficiary transfer. Inheritance reallocation. My name appeared multiple times. So did my mother's. What is this? Brooke's eyes filled with tears. It's your inheritance from Grandma Dorothy. The $50,000 she left you when she died last year. Mom's been trying to get you to sign it over to her and Dad. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know what I was signing as a witness. Grandma Dorothy had passed away 6 months ago. She was Grandpa Harold's wife of 47 years, my dad's mother. In her will, she'd left me $50,000 in a trust fund that would fully transfer to me on my 30th birthday. Until then, it sat in an account I couldn't touch, except in emergencies. My hands were shaking now too. There's more. I've been going through my credit card statements because something felt off. Kendra, someone's been using your credit cards. What? She swiped to more photos. Screenshots of credit card statements. Purchases I'd never made. Luxury handbags from department stores I'd never shopped at. Jewelry from boutiques I'd never heard of. A car payment for a vehicle I didn't own. Charges at high-end restaurants and spas. I felt like I was falling, even though I was lying flat in a hospital bed. How much? Brooke's voice cracked. Over $12,000. Across 3 cards, the room tilted. $12,000. That was nearly my entire emergency fund, maxed out on credit I'd worked years to build. There's something else. She pulled up another photo. I think this is Mom's new car. The one she said Dad bought her for their anniversary last month? The purchase date on this loan statement matches. And it's in your name. My vision blurred. Not from medication this time. From pure, overwhelming betrayal. My own mother had stolen my identity, had forged my signature, or somehow accessed my information to open credit accounts and make purchases, and she'd used my inheritance from my grandmother, her own mother-in-law, as leverage to fund her lifestyle. Brooke, we have to tell someone. My sister's face went pale. I can't. Mom and Dad will destroy me. They already threatened me once when I asked too many questions about something else. They said they'd ruin my teaching career, that they'd make sure I never worked in education again. I can't lose my job, Kendra. I just got it. I have student loans. She was sobbing now, and despite my own shock and pain, I felt sorry for her. Brooke had always been the peacekeeper in our family, the one who smoothed over tensions and made excuses for our parents' behavior. I'd never realized how much pressure that put on her. It's okay, I understand. Just leave this with me, all right? She nodded, wiping her eyes. She stood to leave but paused at the door. Kendra, I'm really sorry. About all of it, including not being here sooner. After she left, I lay in that sterile hospital room, staring at the ceiling tiles. My body ached from the accident, but that pain was nothing compared to the agony spreading through my chest as I realized the truth. My parents hadn't refused to come to the hospital because they were busy. They'd refused because they were angry I was still alive, and conscious enough to potentially interfere with whatever scheme they were running. The accident was inconvenient for them. I was inconvenient for them, and it was about to get so much worse. The hospital discharged me 5 days after the accident. My instructions were strict. No driving for 6 weeks, no heavy lifting, attend all follow-up appointments, watch for signs of infection or internal complications. The list went on. Grandpa Harold insisted I come stay with him rather than return to my apartment. Given that I could barely walk from the bed to the bathroom without getting dizzy, I didn't argue. His house was a modest ranch-style home in a quiet neighborhood with tree-lined streets and well-kept lawns. I'd spent countless weekends here as a child, back when Grandma Dorothy was still alive and would make her famous apple pie every Sunday. The familiar scent of Old Spice and coffee greeted me as Grandpa helped me through the front door. He'd set up the guest room with fresh sheets, extra pillows, and a small bell on the nightstand. You ring that if you need anything, anytime, day or night. I'm a light sleeper. Once I was settled, I pulled out my laptop. Time to face the financial devastation. I logged into my credit monitoring account, hands trembling on the keyboard. The screen loaded slowly, each second stretching into eternity. The numbers that appeared made my stomach drop. My credit score, which had been 715 just 3 months ago, now sat at 492. Delinquent accounts, high utilization rates, late payments. The red flags covered my entire report like a disease. I clicked through to the detailed breakdown. 3 credit cards I'd never opened. Store accounts at places I'd never shopped. A car loan for a vehicle I'd never driven. The total debt, $47,863.42. $47,000. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened, ribs screaming in protest. This wasn't just identity theft. This was systematic, calculated destruction of my financial life. The purchases painted a clear picture. Designer handbags, expensive jewelry, home renovations, my mother's new wardrobe, my father's upgraded office furniture, dinners at restaurants I couldn't afford. They'd been living large on my credit for months, maybe longer. With shaking fingers, I called the first credit card company. The customer service representative was sympathetic but firm. Identity theft cases required police reports, affidavits, supporting documentation. The process would take months. Meanwhile, the debt remained in my name, destroying my credit further with each passing day. I made 7 more calls. Each one went the same way. File a police report. Provide documentation. Wait for investigation. Dispute the charges. More waiting. The timeline stretched out before me like a prison sentence. Grandpa found me crying at the kitchen table that evening, surrounded by printed credit reports and scribbled notes. He didn't say anything at first, just sat down across from me and waited. "It's bad, Grandpa. Really bad. They've destroyed my credit. $47,000 in fraudulent debt." My voice broke. How could they do this? I'm their daughter. His weathered hand covered mine. Some people, Kenny, they see their own children as resources rather than human beings. It's not about you. It's about their greed. I have to report them. File charges. He nodded slowly. I know. And I'll support you however I can. That night, I barely slept. My mind raced through scenarios, conversations, confrontations. Part of me wanted to call my parents and scream at them, demand answers, demand restitution. But I knew that wouldn't work. People who commit fraud don't suddenly develop a conscience when confronted. The next morning, I made the call I'd been dreading. My hands were slick with sweat as I dialed my mother's number. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright and cheerful. "Kendra, darling, how are you feeling?" The fake concern made my skin crawl. "We need to talk about my credit cards." A pause. "What about them? The $12,000 you charged to them, the 3 new cards you opened in my name, the car loan." "I don't know what you're talking about." Her voice shifted, turning defensive. "Mom, I have the statements. I have proof." Another pause, longer this time. Then her voice changed completely. The sweetness evaporated, replaced by ice. "You owe us, Kendra. We raised you. We fed you, clothed you, put a roof over your head for 18 years. We deserve nice things, too." My jaw dropped. That's not how parenting works. My father's voice came on the line. The phone must have been on speaker. "Don't be ungrateful, Kendra. Family helps family. We needed those things, and you had the credit available. I committed fraud. You stole my identity." His laugh was cold. "Who do you think the police will believe? Us, your loving parents who are worried about your erratic behavior after a traumatic accident. Or you, the girl who just had major surgery and is probably confused from all those pain medications?" The gaslighting was so blatant, so shameless, it took my breath away. "I'm reporting you to the police." "Good luck with that." My mother's voice dripped with venom. "Now, if you're done being dramatic, we have things to do. Stop bothering us with this nonsense." They hung up. I sat frozen, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. They'd dismissed me, threatened me, and made it clear they felt entitled to destroy my financial life. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. My boss's name flashed on the screen. Janet had been my supervisor at the marketing firm for 3 years. She was usually warm and supportive, always advocating for her team. So the coldness in her voice when I answered sent chills down my spine. "Kendra, we need to discuss your employment status." My heart sank. "Is this about my medical leave? I have documentation from the hospital." "No, it's not about that. Someone called the office this morning. They claimed to be a concerned family member. They said some very troubling things." "What kind of things?" "That you have a substance abuse problem. That you were driving under the influence when the accident occurred. That you've been stealing from the company to fund your addiction." The words hit me like physical blows. "What? None of that is true. I don't have a substance abuse problem. I wasn't impaired, and I've never stolen anything." Janet sighed. "Kendra, I want to believe you. But we can't have this kind of liability." The caller provided specific details, dates, amounts. They seemed very credible. "Who called?" "I can't disclose that information." "Janet, please. This is my career." "I'm sorry, Kendra. The decision has been made. You're terminated effective immediately. HR will mail your final check and COBRA information." The line went dead. I stared at my phone in disbelief. Just like that, 3 years of hard work evaporated. My hands shook as I went into my email and forwarded a copy of the caller ID information Janet had mentioned. It took some searching through my old emails to find the office directory, but there it was. The incoming call log from this morning forwarded automatically to the management team as part of their transparency policy for HR issues. The call had come from my mother's cell phone number. My mother had destroyed my career with lies. Systematic, deliberate lies designed to make me unemployable, to isolate me, to leave me financially dependent and unable to fight back. I ran to the bathroom and vomited until there was nothing left but bile. Grandpa found me on the bathroom floor 20 minutes later. He helped me up, got me cleaned up, and led me back to bed. As I lay there, I felt myself sinking into a darkness I'd never known before. My body was broken from the accident. My finances were ruined. My job was gone. And my own parents were the architects of it all. How do you fight people who are supposed to love you? How do you battle the very people who gave you life when they're using every weapon at their disposal to destroy that life? I didn't have answers. Not yet. But I was about to start looking for them. 2 days passed in a fog of pain and despair. I barely ate. Sleep came in fitful bursts, interrupted by nightmares where I was drowning in paperwork and debt while my parents laughed from the shore. Grandpa Harold watched over me with increasing concern, bringing me soup I couldn't stomach and tea that went cold on the nightstand. On the 3rd morning, he knocked gently on the guest room door. "I've made pancakes. Your grandmother's recipe." The mention of Grandma Dorothy made tears spring to my eyes. She'd always been my champion, the one who encouraged my dreams and celebrated my achievements. What would she think of what her son and daughter-in-law had become? I forced myself out of bed and shuffled to the kitchen. Grandpa had set the table with her good dishes, the ones with the tiny blue flowers around the edges. He served me a stack of blueberry pancakes, cut them into small pieces like I was a child, and drizzled them with warm maple syrup. "We need to talk, Kenny." I nodded, pushing the pancakes around my plate. "I've suspected something was wrong with your parents for a while now." He set down his fork and looked at me directly. "About 8 months ago, I noticed some irregularities in my bank statements. Small amounts at first, $50 here, $100 there, then larger sums. Checks I didn't remember writing, withdrawals I didn't authorize." My head snapped up. "They stole from you too?" His jaw tightened. I confronted them about it. They had explanations for everything. Said I must have forgotten, that I was getting older. Maybe my memory wasn't what it used to be. They made me doubt myself, Kenny. My own daughter made me question my own mind. "Gaslighting," I whispered. "They're experts at it." I never said anything more because they're family. Because she's my daughter. He shook his head, eyes glistening. "But what they've done to you crosses every line. This ends now. I'm paying for you to hire a lawyer." "Grandpa, I can't ask you to do that." "You're not asking. I'm insisting." He pulled out his phone and showed me a website he'd already bookmarked. Bradley Peterson. Specializes in family fraud and identity theft cases. He's the best in the state. I already called him. He can see us tomorrow. The next afternoon, We sat in Bradley Peterson's downtown office on the 14th floor of a glass building that overlooked the river. Bradley was in his late 40s, with graying temples and sharp eyes that seemed to catalog every detail. He listened without interrupting as I walked him through everything. The accident, the refused hospital visit, Brooks' revelations, the credit card fraud, the job termination based on lies. When I finished, he leaned back in his leather chair and steepled his fingers. This is one of the more egregious cases I've seen, and I've seen a lot. Can we win? Absolutely. The evidence is substantial. Credit card statements, call logs, witness testimony from your sister. We'll file police reports for identity theft and fraud. We'll pursue civil action for damages. And we'll get restraining orders to keep them away from you while this plays out. Hope flickered in my chest for the first time in days. What's the timeline? These cases typically take 6 to 12 months to resolve fully. But we can get immediate relief through the restraining orders and preliminary injunctions. I'll take this on contingency, which means you don't pay unless we win. We shook hands. As we left his office, I felt lighter than I had since the accident. Maybe I could fight back. Maybe there was justice in the world after all. That optimism lasted exactly 3 hours. The police station downtown was a squat brick building that smelled like old coffee and disinfectant. Detective Morgan, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, took my statement. She seemed sympathetic as I explained the identity theft, the credit card fraud, the defamation that cost me my job. This is clearly a serious matter. We'll open an investigation immediately. Thank you. I felt tears of relief building. However, there's something you should know. She pulled out a file folder from her desk drawer. Your parents came in yesterday. My blood ran cold. They filed a report about you. About me? Detective Morgan opened the folder. They're accusing you of elder abuse against Harold Jenkins, your grandfather. The room tilted. What? They claim you've isolated him from the rest of the family. That you've been manipulating him for his money. That you coerced him into signing financial documents while he was, and I quote, mentally unfit due to age-related decline. That's insane. Grandpa is sharp as a tack. He's the one who's been taking care of me. She held up a hand. There's more. They provided an affidavit from your sister, Brooke Walsh, supporting these allegations. The words hit me like a physical blow. Brooke? My sister who'd warned me about the fraud. My sister who'd shown me the evidence. May I see it? Detective Morgan hesitated, then slid a document across her desk. There was Brooke's signature at the bottom, notarized 3 days ago. The statement claimed I'd been pressuring Grandpa Harold for money, that I'd moved into his house under false pretenses, that I was attempting to change his will to benefit myself. Every word was a lie, a complete fabrication. This isn't true. None of it. My voice sounded hollow in my own ears. That's what investigations are for, to determine the truth. Detective Morgan's expression was neutral now, professional. But this complicates your case considerably. We'll have to investigate both sets of allegations simultaneously. I left the police station feeling like I'd been hollowed out. Grandpa was waiting in the parking lot, sitting in his old sedan. One look at my face and he knew. What happened? I told him everything. About the counter-accusations. About Brooke's affidavit. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. They threatened her. Had to have. Brooke would never do this willingly. But she did do it. Whether willingly or not, her signature was on that document. My own sister had testified against me, giving my parents legal ammunition to deflect from their crimes. We drove back to his house in silence. I felt the walls closing in. My parents weren't just defending themselves. They were on the offensive, attacking from every angle, using every relationship I had as a weapon against me. That night, I lay awake wondering how much worse this could possibly get. I was about to find out. The pain started a week after my discharge from the hospital. At first, I thought it was normal post-surgery discomfort, but it intensified rapidly, spreading from my abdomen to my entire torso. By the 3rd day, I couldn't stand up straight. By the 4th, I was running a fever of 102 degrees. Grandpa took one look at me that morning and grabbed his car keys. We're going to the emergency room. The ER doctor examined me with increasing concern. She ordered blood work and imaging. When the results came back, her expression turned grave. You have an infection at the surgical site. It's spread into your abdominal cavity. We need to operate again, tonight. The words barely registered through my fever haze. Another surgery? It's serious, Miss Jenkins. Without immediate intervention, this could become septic, life-threatening. She left to prepare the operating room. A different doctor, this one from the billing department, appeared with a tablet. "We need to verify your insurance information before we proceed." I gave him my insurance card with shaking hands. He tapped on his screen, frowned, tapped some more. His frown deepened. "Is there a problem?" He looked uncomfortable. "Your claim has been denied by your insurance company." "Denied? Why?" "The accident has been classified as driver negligence. Your policy doesn't cover injuries sustained due to reckless or impaired driving." "I wasn't driving recklessly. I wasn't impaired. The accident wasn't my fault." He held up his hands. "I'm just telling you what the insurance company told us. Apparently there's a police report stating otherwise." My heart stopped. "What police report?" The billing doctor pulled up a document on his tablet. "Filed by a Gloria and Dennis Walsh. Your parents? They gave statements to both the police and your insurance company, claiming they witnessed erratic behavior before you left the house that day. They stated you appeared intoxicated or possibly under the influence of drugs. This couldn't be happening. They weren't even there. I hadn't seen my parents in 2 weeks before the accident." "That's a lie. Complete fabrication." "I understand this is distressing, but right now we have a more pressing issue. The surgery you need costs $73,000. Without insurance coverage, you'll need to arrange payment, or we'll have to transfer you to a county facility." $73,000. I didn't have $73, let alone $73,000. My credit was destroyed, my bank accounts nearly empty after being unemployed for over a week. Grandpa Harold appeared at my bedside. He must have been listening from the hallway. "I'll pay for it." "Sir, that's a substantial amount. I'll write a check right now. Just save my granddaughter." The billing doctor nodded and left. As soon as he was gone, I grabbed Grandpa's hand. "You can't. If the elder abuse charges stick, this could be used as evidence that I'm manipulating you. Kenny, you could die without this surgery. But what if they use it against you? Against us?" He squeezed my hand gently. "Then let them. You're more important than money or accusations. You're my granddaughter and I love you. Now stop arguing and let me take care of you." Tears streamed down my face as they wheeled me to the operating room. Through my fever and fear, one thought kept circling. My parents had orchestrated this. They'd filed false police reports to sabotage my insurance claim. They were willing to let me die, rather than be exposed for their crimes. What kind of people do that to their own child? The surgery took 4 hours. When I woke up in recovery, the pain was somehow worse than before. The infection had been more extensive than the doctors initially thought. They'd had to remove damaged tissue, clean out the abdominal cavity, and insert drains. My hospital stay would be extended by at least another week. Grandpa was there, as always. But he looked older somehow, tired in a way I'd never seen before. The stress was killing him. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. "Don't you dare apologize. This isn't your fault." But it was. If I'd just paid attention at that intersection, if I'd seen the truck coming, if I'd avoided the accident altogether, none of this would be happening. Days blurred together in a haze of pain medication and fitful sleep. My medical bills were climbing past $120,000. My apartment lease was up in 3 weeks and I had no job to pay for a new place. My credit was so destroyed that no landlord would approve me anyway. My entire life had collapsed, and I was powerless to stop it. On my 12th day in the hospital, Grandpa and I were having dinner. Well, he was eating. I was pushing food around a tray. He'd brought me real food from a deli, trying to tempt my appetite with pastrami sandwiches and homemade coleslaw. Mid-bite, he stopped. His face went pale. He clutched his chest. "Grandpa?" His sandwich fell to the floor. He gasped, trying to speak, but no words came out. His lips were turning blue. I screamed for the nurses and slammed the call button. Medical staff flooded the room within seconds. They pulled Grandpa out of the chair and onto the floor. Someone started chest compressions. Another nurse called for a crash cart. "Heart attack," someone said. They worked on him for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Eventually, they got his heart stabilized and rushed him to the cardiac ICU. A nurse helped me into a wheelchair and took me to the waiting room, where I sat alone, still in my hospital gown, with IV tubes trailing from my arm. This was my fault. The stress of my situation had literally given him a heart attack. I was killing the one person who'd stood by me. An hour later, my parents arrived. The hospital had called them as next of kin. They spotted me immediately. My mother's face twisted with rage. "You did this!" She stormed across the waiting room, pointing an accusatory finger at me. "You've stressed him into a heart attack with your lies and drama." My father was right behind her. "You're killing him, Kendra. All because you can't accept responsibility for your own mistakes." Other people in the waiting room were staring. A security guard started moving in our direction. "You stole from me," I said quietly. "You destroyed my credit. You got me fired with lies. You sabotaged my insurance. You're the ones causing all this." My mother laughed. Actually laughed. "Still playing the victim, I see. We're the ones who've been victimized by your manipulation of your grandfather." The security guard reached us. "Folks, I'm going to need you to keep your voices down or take this outside." My father turned on him. "Do you know what this girl has done to her own family? She's a thief and a liar." "Sir, I need you to calm down." But he didn't calm down. Neither did my mother. They continued their tirade until 2 more security officers arrived and escorted them out of the ICU waiting area. Their voices echoed down the hallway, still hurling accusations even as they were removed from the floor. I sat there, shaking, wondering if things could possibly get any worse. A nurse approached me carefully. "Miss Jenkins, there's something you should know about your grandfather's records." "What is it?" "When we admitted him, we pulled up his file from our system. Someone tried to change his emergency contact information recently. His power of attorney documents had been updated." "Updated how?" "The new power of attorney listed Gloria Walsh, your mother, as the primary decision-maker. The new beneficiary on his medical directives was split between Gloria and Dennis Walsh, your parents." My hands went numb. "When did this happen?" 3 days ago. But here's the thing. We have your grandfather's signature on file from previous visits. The signature on these new documents doesn't match. Someone forged his signature." The nurse nodded. "We've notified our legal department and flagged the documents as potentially fraudulent. But you should know that your parents were attempting to gain control of his medical and financial decisions." The full picture crystallized in my mind with horrifying clarity. My parents hadn't just been stealing from me and Grandpa. They'd been planning for him to die. They'd been positioning themselves to control his estate, his medical care, everything. And when I'd gotten in the way, when I'd survived the accident and started asking questions, they'd systematically destroyed every aspect of my life to silence me. They weren't just criminals. They were monsters. And somehow, I had to find a way to stop them. Grandpa Harold survived the heart attack. Barely. The cardiologist said he'd need a triple bypass surgery once he was stable enough to handle the procedure. For now, he lay in the ICU, hooked up to machines that beeped and hummed, keeping him alive. I spent every moment I could by his bedside, despite still recovering from my own surgery. The nurses bent the rules to let me stay. They'd seen what my parents had tried to do with the forged documents. They knew which side of this nightmare held the truth. 3 days after his heart attack, a social worker appeared at my hospital bedside. My own discharge was scheduled for the next day. The social worker, a kind woman named Patricia, with gray streaks in her dark hair, sat down with a clipboard. "We need to discuss your living situation, Kendra." "I don't have one. My lease is up in 2 weeks. I can't afford a new place. My credit won't let me rent anywhere." "What about family?" The question would have been funny if it wasn't so tragic. My family is the reason I'm in this situation. Patricia nodded sadly. "I've reviewed your case file." "What about friends?" I'd been so focused on work and taking care of myself that my friend circle had dwindled. The few close friends I had were scattered across the country. Nobody local with a spare room or the ability to help someone as broken as I currently was. "I'll figure something out." She gave me a look that said she'd heard that before, and it usually meant homelessness. "Here's a list of resources. Shelters, assistance programs. Given your medical condition, you might qualify for temporary disability housing." Shelters. I was 28 years old with a bachelor's degree and a career, and I was looking at homeless shelters. After Patricia left, I stared at the ceiling tiles and let myself truly feel the despair. My body was still healing, covered in surgical scars and drain tubes. My finances were obliterated. My job was gone. The one family member who loved me was fighting for his life in the ICU. My apartment would be gone in 2 weeks. I had nowhere to go and no resources to get there. I'd hit rock bottom, and I was still falling. That evening, my phone buzzed with an email notification. My landlord. The message was brief and devastating. Due to my failure to provide proof of continued employment, they were not renewing my lease. I had until the end of the month to vacate. That was 13 days away. 13 days to figure out where I was going to live. while recovering from 2 surgeries, with no job and no money, and a credit score that made me radioactive to any legitimate housing option. I closed my eyes and tried to breathe through the panic attack building in my chest. The next morning, I was officially discharged from the hospital. A volunteer wheeled me down to the exit where Grandpa's sedan waited. A neighbor of his, Mrs. Chen from 2 doors down, had volunteered to drive me back to his house since he obviously couldn't. She was a sweet elderly woman who tried to make small talk, but I could barely respond. Back at Grandpa's house, I moved slowly through the rooms that had become my refuge. Every step hurt. The drains from my second surgery pulled and tugged. I was supposed to have home healthcare visits, but those cost money I didn't have. The hospital had given me supplies and instructions on how to care for the surgical sites myself. I managed to change the dressings, wincing through the pain. In the mirror, I looked like a ghost. Pale, drawn, dark circles under my eyes. I'd lost 15 pounds I couldn't afford to lose. My clothes hung off me. My phone rang. Bradley Peterson. Milaver. Kendra, I have an update. The police investigation is moving forward, but slowly. Your parents' counter-accusations are complicating things. However, I've filed for emergency restraining orders. The hearing is scheduled for next week. That's good news, right? It's progress, but there's something else. I received notification that your parents have filed a civil suit against you. For what? Defamation. They claim your accusations of fraud have damaged their reputation and business interests. They're seeking $250,000 in damages. I actually laughed. It came out harsh and bitter. I don't have $250, let alone $250,000. I know. This is a strategic move on their part. They're trying to bury you in legal proceedings, make it too expensive and overwhelming to fight back. It's a common tactic in these cases. Is it working? Because it feels like it's working. Bradley's voice was firm. We're not giving up, Kendra. I've seen cases like this before. The truth has a way of coming out. Keep gathering evidence. Keep documentation of everything, and let me handle the legal strategy. After we hung up, I sat on Grandpa's couch and stared at the wall. $250,000. Another massive debt hanging over my head. Another weapon my parents were using to crush me. I dragged myself to Grandpa's bedroom to get some of his things to take to the hospital later. As I was gathering his reading glasses and a book from his nightstand, I remembered what he'd said in the hospital before his heart attack. Something about checking his safe. The safe. He'd mentioned it right before they took him for his cardiac procedures. Said the code was my birthday, 0615, June 15th. I found the safe in his closet, behind a row of shoeboxes on the top shelf. It was a small fireproof model, gray with a digital keypad. My hands shook as I entered the numbers. 0, 6, 1, 5. The safe beeped and the lock disengaged. Inside were folders. Lots of folders. Bank statements going back 3 years. Canceled checks with signatures that didn't look like Grandpa's handwriting. Photographs of documents. And a USB drive with a label that read evidence in Grandpa's careful print. I pulled everything out and spread it across his bed. The bank statements showed a pattern of unauthorized withdrawals. Small amounts at first, then gradually increasing. Checks made out to home improvement stores, luxury retailers, vacation resorts, none of which Grandpa would have written. The photographs showed similar documents, but there was more. Receipts, credit card statements that weren't Grandpa's, and a thick manila envelope labeled Private Investigator Report. I opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a comprehensive investigation report dated 4 months ago. Grandpa had hired a private investigator to look into suspicious activity around his accounts. The report was devastating. It detailed 3 years of financial abuse. My parents had been systematically stealing from Grandpa Harold, forging his signature, making unauthorized withdrawals. The investigator estimated they'd taken over $200,000 from his accounts, but it went deeper. The investigator had found evidence that my parents had done the same thing to Grandpa's sister, Great Aunt Helen, before she died last year. They'd drained her accounts in the months before her death, leaving her nearly penniless. The nursing home had almost evicted her for non-payment because someone had redirected her pension checks. My parents had essentially killed their aunt through financial neglect. I felt sick. Actually, physically sick. I ran to the bathroom and dry heaved over the toilet. When I could stand again, I went back to the bedroom. The USB drive sat on the bed, innocuous and small. I grabbed my laptop and plugged it in. The drive contained audio files, dozens of them. each labeled with a date and time. I clicked on the first one. Grandpa's voice came through the speakers. Then my mother's. Then my father's. They were having dinner, from the sound of it. Casual conversation at first. Then my mother said something that made my blood freeze. "Dad, you need to update your will. Put the house in our names. You're not getting any younger." Grandpa's response was cautious. "I've already made arrangements. Everything's taken care of." My father's voice cut in. "Harder. We're your family. We should be the beneficiaries, not some lawyer or charity." The conversation continued, my parents pressuring Grandpa to change his will, to give them access to his accounts, to sign over property. Grandpa deflected and redirected, but the pressure was relentless. I listened to file after file. Grandpa had been secretly recording conversations with my parents for months. The evidence was overwhelming. Threats disguised as concern, manipulation framed as family love, and in one particularly chilling recording from 2 months ago, a conversation I could barely believe, my mother's voice. "If he would just hurry up and die, we could move forward with our plans." My father, "Be patient. He's old. It won't be much longer." They'd been waiting for Grandpa to die, planning for it, hoping for it. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely control the mouse. I kept listening. The final recording was dated 3 weeks ago, right after my accident. My mother's voice again. "Kendra's starting to ask questions. She's becoming a problem." My father, "We'll handle it. We've already started laying the groundwork. The credit cards, the job. If she keeps pushing, we'll push back harder." They'd planned all of it. Every single piece of my destruction had been calculated, deliberate, strategic. The front door opened. I jumped, heart racing, before remembering that Bradley Peterson was scheduled to stop by to pick up some documents. "Kendra?" His voice called from the living room. "I'm in here. Bring your briefcase. You need to see this." Bradley came into the bedroom and stopped short when he saw the papers spread across the bed, my laptop open with the audio files queued up. I showed him everything. The bank statements, the investigator's report, the recordings. His eyes grew wider with each piece of evidence. When I finished, he sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. "Kendra, this changes everything." I waited, afraid to hope. "This is federal wire fraud, elder abuse across state lines. They targeted your great-aunt in Arizona before coming back to Texas. This isn't just civil court anymore, this is criminal. This is FBI jurisdiction." My heart was pounding. So what does that mean? It means we're not just defending you anymore. We're going on offense. The evidence here is overwhelming. Your parents are facing serious federal charges. We can get the charges against you dismissed immediately. We can clear your name, restore your credit, and make them pay restitution for everything they've done. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than despair. I felt hope. And more than that, I felt something that had been building quietly underneath all the pain and betrayal. I felt angry. My parents had tried to destroy me. They'd tried to kill my grandfather through stress and forged medical directives. They'd stolen from a dying woman. They'd manipulated and gaslit and lied. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd left evidence. And Grandpa Harold had been smart enough to collect it. Bradley made several phone calls right there in the bedroom. By the time he hung up from the third call, he was smiling. Actually smiling. "The FBI has been investigating your parents for 2 weeks. The private investigator Grandpa hired tipped them off. They've been building a case, waiting for enough evidence to move forward. What you just found, that's the missing pieces they needed. What happens now? Now we fight back. And this time we win." The next 72 hours moved with shocking speed. FBI agents came to Grandpa's house to collect the evidence. They were professional and thorough, cataloging every document, every recording, every scrap of proof. The lead agent, a woman named Special Agent Torres, with sharp eyes and a firmer handshake than my father's, told me they'd been watching my parents for weeks. "We knew something was wrong, but we needed solid evidence. Your grandfather's recordings are exactly what we needed. Combined with the financial forensics we've been running, we have enough for indictments. How long until they're arrested?" "Soon. We're coordinating with local police and the district attorney. Within the week, I'd estimate." True to her word, my parents were arrested 4 days later. I wasn't there, but the news spread quickly through family channels. They'd been taken into custody at their home early in the morning. Federal charges, wire fraud, identity theft, elder abuse, conspiracy to commit fraud. The list went on. Bradley called me with updates throughout the day. The elder abuse charges against you have been dropped. The DA reviewed the evidence and determined they were false accusations filed in bad faith. Your sister Brooke has also recanted her affidavit. She's cooperating with investigators. Brooke. My heart ached for my sister. I called her that afternoon. She answered on the first ring, her voice thick with tears. Kendra, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Tell me what happened. She sobbed for a long moment before she could speak. After I came to see you in the hospital, Mom and Dad figured out that I'd talked to you. They confronted me. Said they'd destroy me if I didn't back them up. They threatened to call my school board, claim I was unfit to teach. They said they'd ruin my credit like they ruined yours. I was terrified. I understand, but I couldn't live with it. I kept thinking about you in that hospital bed. How they wouldn't even come when you almost died. How they're willing to hurt anyone to get what they want. So I went to Mr. Peterson, your lawyer. I told him everything, about the threats, about what they made me sign, about all the things I've seen over the years that I ignored because I was too scared. You did the right thing. We talked for over an hour. Brooke told me about years of manipulation and control, how our parents had used fear and obligation to keep both of us compliant, how she'd watched them isolate Grandpa Harold, notice the same patterns starting with me after Grandma Dorothy died. They go after people when they're vulnerable. When someone loses a spouse, when someone is in an accident, when someone might have an inheritance, they're predators. She was right. That's exactly what they were. The court proceedings moved forward. Bradley filed motions to dismiss the defamation suit against me, pointing to the mountain of evidence proving my accusations were true. He filed countersuits for the damages I'd suffered. He worked with the FBI to provide evidence for the criminal case. And through it all, Grandpa Harold recovered. Slowly, carefully, but he recovered. His bypass surgery was successful. Within 2 weeks, he was well enough to leave the ICU. Within 3, he was home. The first thing he said when he walked through his front door was, "Kenny, we need to talk." We sat in his living room, the afternoon sun streaming through the windows. He looked thinner, older, but his eyes were bright and alert. I've been doing a lot of thinking in that hospital bed. About family, about trust, about what really matters. He reached over and squeezed my hand. You saved my life by standing up to them. If you hadn't started asking questions, hadn't fought back, they would have succeeded. They would have stolen everything and left me to die thinking I was losing my mind. You saved mine first. You came to the hospital when no one else would. That's what real family does. And I want you to know something. I've updated my will. Everything goes to you and Brooke. The house, the accounts, everything. Not because I'm planning on going anywhere soon, but because you two are my real family. The ones who deserve it. Tears streamed down my face. Grandpa, I never wanted your money. I know. That's exactly why you're getting it. 3 weeks after the accident, the day mentioned in the thumbnail, I walked into a conference room at Bradley Peterson's law office. The space was formal, with a long mahogany table and leather chairs. My parents sat on one side, their lawyer beside them. They were out on bail, awaiting trial, but they looked diminished somehow. Smaller, less powerful than I remembered. Grandpa Harold was there, fully recovered and standing tall. Brooke sat beside him. Bradley was at the head of the table, and I carried a folder of papers. These papers represented everything. Court orders dismissing all false charges against me, restraining orders against my parents, civil lawsuit judgments in my favor, evidence packets for the criminal trial, documents showing my credit had been restored after Bradley worked with all 3 credit bureaus, letters from my insurance company reversing their decision and covering all my medical bills with an apology for accepting false information, and one more document. A settlement offer from my parents' attorney. My mother tried to speak first, her voice syrupy and false. Kendra, sweetheart, we can work this out as a family. Bradley cut her off immediately. Mrs. Walsh, you're currently under federal indictment. I'd advise against speaking directly to my client. My father leaned forward, his face red. This is ridiculous. We're your parents. You're tearing this family apart. For the first time in my life, I looked at my father without fear, without the ingrained need for his approval, without the childhood belief that parents were always right. You tore this family apart when you decided we were resources instead of people. When you stole from Grandma Dorothy's sister until she died alone and broke. When you stole from Grandpa Harold. When you destroyed my credit, got me fired with lies, and let me face life-threatening surgery rather than admit what you'd done. My mother's fake sweetness evaporated. After everything we did for you, we raised you. You were legally obligated to raise me. That's not something I owe you for. That's called being a parent. Bradley laid out the papers one by one. The evidence against my parents was overwhelming. The FBI had traced wire transfers across state lines. They'd documented 3 years of systematic fraud. They'd found evidence of similar patterns with other family members going back a decade. The criminal charges alone carry a minimum sentence of 5 years, Bradley said calmly. The maximum is 20. The restitution owed between both criminal and civil proceedings exceeds $400,000. My parents' lawyer, a tired-looking man who clearly knew his clients were guilty, pushed a document across the table. A plea agreement. My parents would plead guilty to reduced charges, accept a combined 9 years in federal prison, split between them, and agree to pay full restitution of $160,000 to me and $240,000 to Grandpa Harold. Bradley looked at me. It's your decision, Kendra. We can take this to trial and likely get a longer sentence. Or we can accept this and move forward. I thought about revenge, about making them suffer as much as they'd made me suffer. But I also thought about healing, about moving forward, about the fact that every day spent on this case was another day they occupied space in my life. I accept, on one condition, they're never to contact me, Brooke, or Grandpa Harold again. Ever. That's already in the restraining order, Bradley confirmed. My mother started crying. Fake tears I'd seen 1,000 times before. You're really going to send your own parents to prison? No. I looked at her directly. You sent yourselves to prison the moment you decided to commit federal crimes. I'm just making sure you face the consequences. The meeting ended shortly after. As we walked out, my parents were led away by federal marshals to begin processing for their guilty plea. I didn't look back. Outside the building, Grandpa Harold put his arm around me. How do you feel? Tired, relieved, free. That's a good start. Over the next weeks and months, pieces of my life clicked back into place. The insurance settlement covered all my medical bills with money left over. Bradley negotiated the termination of my lease without penalty. I moved into Grandpa's house temporarily while I figured out my next steps. My credit was fully restored. The fraudulent accounts were removed, and a fraud alert was placed on all my records. I started job hunting and found something even better than my old position. A senior marketing director role at a growing tech company with better pay, better benefits, and a boss who actually valued her employees. Brooke and I started having weekly dinners, rebuilding the relationship our parents had tried to poison. She was seeing a therapist to work through the years of manipulation and control. So was I. Grandpa Harold thrived. With the stress of my parents' abuse removed, his health improved dramatically. He started attending a support group for elder abuse survivors and became an advocate, speaking at community centers about the warning signs. 6 months after the accident, I sat on Grandpa's back porch watching the sunset. My scars had healed, leaving thin white lines across my abdomen, physical reminders of everything I'd survived. But I didn't hate them. They were proof I'd made it through. My phone buzzed with a news alert. My parents had been sentenced. My father received 5 years in federal prison. My mother received 4 years. Both were ordered to pay full restitution and were permanently banned from working in financial services or positions of trust. Justice. Real justice. Brooke came out onto the porch with 2 glasses of iced tea. She'd moved into a small apartment nearby and visited often. Saw the news? Yeah. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Brooke said, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't called Grandpa that night in the hospital? I think about it sometimes. I probably would have died. Or survived, but never known the truth about what they were doing. They would have kept stealing, kept manipulating, kept destroying lives. But you did survive. And you fought back." I nodded. Survival wasn't enough anymore. I'd learned that the hard way. Sometimes you had to fight. Sometimes you had to stand up to the people who were supposed to love you and say no more. Grandpa Harold joined us on the porch, settling into his favorite chair with a satisfied sigh. Beautiful evening. It really is, I agreed. Looking back now, I can see that the accident saved my life in more ways than one. Yes, the physical trauma nearly killed me. But it also exposed a truth I'd been blind to for years. My parents didn't love me. They loved what they could take from me. And once I understood that, truly understood it, I could start healing. The legal aftermath took almost a year to fully resolve. Restitution payments trickled in from seized assets and garnished wages once my parents started their prison terms. I didn't need the money by then. My new job paid well, and I'd rebuilt my emergency fund. But I accepted every penny because it represented accountability. They couldn't charm or manipulate their way out of consequences anymore. Brooke flourished once she was free from our parents' control. She got promoted to lead teacher at her school. She started dating someone kind and supportive. She smiled more. The weight she'd carried for years lifted, and I watched my sister transform into the person she was always meant to be. Grandpa Harold became my anchor and my hero. He taught me that real love shows up. Real love doesn't abandon you in a hospital bed or steal your identity while you're vulnerable. Real love signs consent forms at midnight and refuses to leave your side. He showed me what family should be. The people who hurt me shared my blood, but they weren't my family. Family is chosen, earned through actions and trust, and showing up when it matters most. I learned to set boundaries that would have seemed impossible before. When distant relatives reached out, trying to mediate or suggest I should forgive my parents for the sake of family unity, I said no. Firmly, clearly, without guilt. Forgiveness isn't mandatory, and reconciliation isn't required just because someone shares your DNA. My therapist helped me understand that children are conditioned to seek parental approval, that breaking free from abusive parents requires rewiring decades of programming, that guilt and grief are normal, even when you're doing the right thing. Some days were harder than others, but I kept moving forward. The tech company where I worked valued innovation and employee well-being. My boss, Catherine, became a mentor. She'd survived her own family trauma and recognized the signs of someone rebuilding after destruction. She gave me opportunities to prove myself, and I thrived. Within a year, I was promoted to vice president of marketing. The job I'd lost felt like a distant memory, a bullet dodged rather than a tragedy. I found a small house to rent in Grandpa Harold's neighborhood. 2 bedrooms, a yard with a garden, and enough space to breathe. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Every month when I paid rent on time with money I'd earned honestly, I felt proud. This was stability built on truth rather than stolen credit. Dating was complicated. How do you explain to someone new that your parents are in federal prison for stealing from you? But I learned to be honest about my past without letting it define me. The right people stayed. The ones who couldn't handle the complexity left, and that was okay too. Brooke and I made new traditions. Sunday dinners at Grandpa's house, monthly movie nights, holiday celebrations built around joy rather than obligation. We invited friends who'd become family. We laughed more than I'd laughed in years. I started speaking at support groups for financial abuse survivors. Sharing my story helped others recognize the patterns in their own lives. I learned I wasn't alone. So many people experience financial exploitation by family members. The shame and silence around it allows abusers to continue. By speaking up, I helped break that cycle for others. 2 years after the accident, I stood in a courtroom for the final legal hearing. My parents' appeals had been denied. The restitution had been paid in full. The restraining orders would remain in effect permanently. Bradley Peterson shook my hand and congratulated me on seeing it through to the end. Your parents will be eligible for parole in 3 years, he reminded me. They may try to contact you then. And I'll report any violation immediately. I'm not afraid of them anymore. And I wasn't. Fear had been replaced by clarity. They'd shown me exactly who they were. I believed them. I believed the evidence. I believed my own experience. And I refused to ever doubt myself again for their convenience. The scars on my abdomen faded to thin silver lines, barely noticeable unless you knew where to look. But the emotional scars took longer to heal. I still had moments of anxiety when unexpected bills arrived. Still caught myself checking my credit report compulsively. Still struggled with trusting people's intentions. But I also learned my own strength. I'd survived a near-fatal accident. I'd endured 2 emergency surgeries. I'd lost my job, my home, my credit, and nearly my life. I'd been betrayed by the people who should have protected me most, and I'd fought back. I'd gathered evidence. I'd stood up in court. I'd refused to be a victim. That strength became the foundation for everything else. When challenges arose at work, I faced them head-on. When relationships got difficult, I communicated clearly rather than people-pleasing. When I felt myself slipping into old patterns of seeking approval from people who didn't deserve it, I caught myself and redirected. Grandpa Harold turned 77. We threw him a birthday party in his backyard. Real family came. Chosen family. Neighbors who'd become friends. Brooke's boyfriend. My co-workers who'd rallied around me during the hardest times. Catherine from work. Bradley Peterson and his wife. Even Mrs. Chen from down the street who'd driven me home from the hospital that first day. We ate cake and told stories, and celebrated a man who embodied what family should be. He gave a short speech that made everyone cry. He talked about the importance of showing up for people you love, about how blood doesn't make family, about how he was proud of his granddaughters for their courage. That night, after everyone left and we were cleaning up, Grandpa Harold pulled me aside. "Your grandmother Dorothy would be so proud of you, Kenny. You stood up for yourself. You protected me. You helped your sister find her way out. You did what needed to be done. I miss her." "Me too. But she's here. In you. In Brooke. In the lessons she taught about kindness and strength and not accepting less than you deserve." 3 years after the accident, I got a notification from the Victim Services Coordinator. My parents were up for parole review. I was invited to submit a statement or attend the hearing. I declined both. They'd taken enough of my time. Enough of my energy. Enough of my life. Whether they got out early or served their full sentence didn't change my reality. The restraining orders remained in effect. I'd built a life they had no part in. Their presence or absence from prison didn't impact that life anymore. They were denied parole. The board cited lack of remorse and failure to take responsibility for their crimes. They'd served the full sentence. I felt nothing when I heard the news. Not satisfaction. Not disappointment. Just nothing. They'd become irrelevant to my story. 4 years after the accident, I bought my first home. A small craftsman-style house with a front porch and a backyard, big enough for a vegetable garden. The mortgage was approved based on my excellent credit and stable employment. I cried when I signed the closing papers. This was mine, built by my work, secured by my integrity. Brooke helped me move in. Grandpa Harold directed furniture placement from a lawn chair in the living room. We ordered pizza and christened the new house with laughter and music and hope. That night, alone in my new bedroom, I thought about the girl who'd been T-boned at an intersection 4 years ago. The girl who'd called her parents from a hospital bed and been told she was an inconvenience. The girl who'd lost everything and had to rebuild from nothing. I wished I could go back and tell her it would be okay, that the pain would pass, that she was stronger than she knew, that the people who failed her would face consequences, that she'd find real family in unexpected places, that she'd survive, and more than that, she'd thrive. But I couldn't go back. I could only move forward. The life lesson I learned through all of it is simple but profound. You can't control how other people treat you. You can only control how you respond. You can choose to stay silent and accept abuse. Or you can choose to speak up, gather evidence, fight back, and reclaim your life. It won't be easy. Fighting back against family, especially parents, goes against every social norm and childhood conditioning. People will tell you to forgive, to make peace, to remember their family. But sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk away from people who are actively harming you, even if they share your blood. Real family shows up. Real family doesn't steal your identity. Real family doesn't forge signatures to control your medical decisions. Real family doesn't lie to get you fired. Real family doesn't abandon you when you're dying. Real family looks like Grandpa Harold driving through the night to sign hospital forms. Real family looks like Brooke gathering the courage to recant false testimony. Real family looks like friends who become chosen siblings. Real family looks like a community rallying around someone in crisis. I built a new family on foundations of trust and honesty. I learned my worth isn't determined by the people who gave birth to me. I learned that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. Today, I live a quiet life full of small joys. Morning coffee on my front porch. Sunday dinners with people who genuinely care. A career I'm proud of. A sister I'm rebuilding a relationship with. A grandfather who taught me what unconditional love actually looks like. A home that's mine. A credit score that reflects my integrity. A future I'm excited about. The scars remain, both visible and invisible. But they're proof I survived something that could have destroyed me. They're evidence of battles fought and won. They're reminders that I'm stronger than I ever imagined possible. If you're reading this, and you're in a similar situation, if your family is exploiting you financially or emotionally, please know this. You're not alone. You're not overreacting. And you deserve better. Document everything. Tell someone you trust. Get legal help. Fight back. It will be hard, it will be painful, but you are worth fighting for. And if someone has hurt you, especially family, you don't owe them forgiveness. You don't owe them reconciliation. You don't owe them anything except protecting yourself and building a life worth living. That accident that almost killed me? It was the worst thing, and the best thing, that ever happened to me. Worse because of the physical trauma and the pain that followed. Best because it exposed the truth I needed to see. It forced me to stand up for myself. It showed me who my real family was. Sometimes the universe has a brutal way of putting you on the path you were always meant to walk. Mine involved a truck, 2 surgeries, federal crimes, and rebuilding my entire life from scratch. Yours might look different, but the core truth remains the same. You are worth fighting for. You deserve people who show up. You deserve honesty and respect and love that doesn't come with conditions or theft or manipulation. Don't let anyone, not even family, especially family, convince you otherwise. I'm living proof that you can survive betrayal, face down your abusers, and build something beautiful from the wreckage. It took 4 years, but I made it. And if I can do it, so can you. My name is Kendra. I'm 32 years old. I survived being T-boned by a truck. I survived 2 emergency surgeries. I survived parents who tried to destroy me. And I'm here to tell you that survival is just the beginning. What comes after can be extraordinary if you're willing to fight for it. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who were taking advantage of you? How did you find the courage to set boundaries? What helped you rebuild after betrayal? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who's struggling right now. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps this message reach others who might need to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about overcoming adversity and finding strength in the hardest moments. Share this video with someone who needs to know they're not alone in their struggle. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope you find the courage to stand up for yourself, the wisdom to recognize real family from fake, and the strength to build a life that honors your worth. You deserve better. Don't ever forget that.